The morning sun cast long shadows across Althorpe House as Charles Spencer, the ninth Earl Spencer, stood before his bedroom mirror adjusting his formal morning coat. Today was not just any day. It was a day that would bring back memories of his beloved sister Diana, Princess of Wales, who had passed away years earlier. A royal wedding invitation lay on his dresser, elegant script announcing the union that would take place at Westminster Abbey. Earl Spencer's hands trembled slightly as he fastened his cufflinks. These were the same cufflinks he had worn to Diana's funeral, and now he was preparing to attend another royal ceremony. The weight of history seemed to press down on his shoulders. His sister had been the people's princess, loved by millions around the world, and her tragic death in a Paris car crash had left an emptiness that still echoed through the Spencer family. From downstairs, he could hear the excited chatter of his daughters getting ready. Lady Kitty Spencer, his eldest daughter, was now a successful model and socialite, known for her striking resemblance to her late Aunt Diana. At 28, she had inherited the Spencer beauty and grace that had made Diana so captivating to the world. Her younger sisters, Lady Eliza and Lady Amelia, twins who were now 26, were equally beautiful and poised. The three Spencer daughters had grown up in the shadow of their famous aunt's legacy, but they had carved out their own paths in life. They understood the significance of today's royal wedding and the emotions it would stir for their father. The Spencer family had a complex relationship with the royal family. There had been love, loss, tension, and reconciliation over the years. Earl Spencer walked to his window and looked out over the grounds of Althorpe, the Spencer family estate that had been home to the family for over 500 years. Somewhere in these grounds lay Diana, buried on a small island in the middle of the estate's lake. He visited her grave regularly, speaking to her about family matters and seeking her guidance even in death. Today's royal wedding would bring the Spencer family back into the spotlight once again. The media would be watching their every move, analyzing their expressions, and drawing comparisons to Diana. Earl Spencer had learned to navigate these public appearances with dignity, but it never became easier. The cameras would capture every moment, and the world would be watching to see how Princess Diana's family honored her memory while celebrating this new royal union. As he prepared to leave his room, Earl Spencer picked up a small photograph from his bedside table. It showed him and Diana as children playing in the gardens of Althorpe. Her infectious smile beamed from the picture, and for a moment he could almost hear her laughter echoing through the halls of their childhood home. She had been more than his sister. She had been his confidant, his supporter, and one of his dearest friends. The sound of car engines in the driveway below signaled that their transportation had arrived. Earl Spencer took one last look at Diana's photograph, whispered a quiet, "Wish you were here," and placed it gently back on the table. Today would be emotional, but it would also be a celebration. Diana would have wanted them to find joy in such occasions, to embrace the happiness of others, even while carrying their own grief. Downstairs, his daughters were waiting in their elegant outfits, each one a vision of Spencer sophistication. They had learned from their father how to carry themselves with dignity in public, how to smile graciously at photographers while maintaining their privacy, and how to honor their family's legacy while living their own lives. The Spencer name came with both privileges and responsibilities, and they understood both. The drive to London would give them time to prepare mentally for the day ahead. Earl Spencer knew that once they arrived at Westminster Abbey, they would be in the public eye constantly. Every gesture, every expression, every interaction would be scrutinized. The British press had a particular fascination with the Spencer family, especially when they appeared at royal events. As they settled into their car, Earl Spencer felt a mixture of emotions washing over him. There was sadness for Diana's absence, pride in his daughter's grace and beauty, and a sense of duty to represent the Spencer family with honor. The royal wedding would be a grand affair, steeped in tradition and pageantry, and they would play their part in this historic day while carrying Diana's memory in their hearts. The Spencer family's Rolls-Royce glided through the London streets as crowds of royal watchers lined the pavements, hoping to catch a glimpse of the wedding guests arriving. Earl Spencer sat quietly in the back seat, watching the city pass by while his daughters chatted excitedly about the day ahead. Lady Kitty was discussing the fashion choices she had observed among the other guests, while the twins, Eliza and Amelia, were taking turns reading updates from their phones about the royal couple's preparations. The atmosphere in London was electric with anticipation. Union Jack flags hung from windows and lampposts, and street vendors were selling commemorative items to tourists who had traveled from around the world to witness this historic occasion. The Spencer family had attended many royal events over the years, but each one brought its own unique energy and significance. As they approached Westminster Abbey, the crowds grew thicker and more enthusiastic. Earl Spencer could see the familiar sight of the Gothic architecture rising majestically against the London sky. This was the same abbey where Diana had been married to Prince Charles in 1981, in what had been called the wedding of the century. The irony was not lost on him that they were returning to this sacred place for another royal celebration, while Diana's own marriage had ended in such public heartbreak. The car slowed as they joined the queue of vehicles dropping off distinguished guests at the Abbey entrance. Earl Spencer straightened his tie and checked his pocket watch, a family heirloom that had belonged to his father. Punctuality was essential at royal events, and the Spencer family had always prided itself on proper etiquette and respect for protocol. Lady Kitty applied a final touch of lipstick using her compact mirror, while the twins helped each other adjust their fascinators. The Spencer daughters had become accomplished young women, comfortable in high society circles while maintaining their own individual personalities. They had learned from their father's example how to navigate the complexities of aristocratic life while staying true to their values. Through the car windows, they could see photographers positioned behind barriers, their long telephoto lenses ready to capture every arrival. The Spencer family had a complicated relationship with the media. They understood the public's fascination with their connection to Princess Diana, but they also valued their privacy and normal family life away from the cameras. Earl Spencer reflected on how much had changed since Diana's death. His daughters had grown from teenagers into accomplished women, each pursuing their own interests and careers. Lady Kitty had become a sought-after model, gracing the covers of international magazines and walking runways for prestigious fashion houses. The twins had focused on their education and philanthropic interests, following in the Spencer family tradition of charitable work. The security at Westminster Abbey was unprecedented, with police officers and royal protection officers visible at every entrance and exit. This level of security had become the norm for major royal events, a reminder of the changing world and the need to protect the royal family and their guests from potential threats. As their car finally reached the entrance, Earl Spencer could see the red carpet leading into the Abbey and the formal ushers waiting to guide guests to their seats. The Spencer family would be seated in a prominent position, reflecting their status as members of the extended royal family and their historical connection to the monarchy through Diana. The car door opened, and Earl Spencer stepped out first, immediately straightening his morning coat and nodding politely to the waiting photographers. The flashbulbs began popping instantly as Lady Kitty emerged, looking radiant in her carefully chosen outfit. The twins followed, their synchronized movements reflecting their close bond as sisters. Earl Spencer offered his arm to Lady Kitty, while the twins linked arms with each other, and together they began their walk up the red carpet toward the Abbey entrance. The crowd's cheers grew louder as people recognized the Spencer family, and Earl Spencer could hear voices calling out, "We love you," and "Diana would be proud." The weight of public expectation was something the Spencer family had learned to carry with grace. They knew that their presence at royal events was seen as a way of honoring Diana's memory and maintaining the connection between the Spencer family and the royal family. Despite the personal pain and complicated emotions involved, they recognized their duty to appear at such occasions with dignity and respect. Inside the Abbey, they could hear the magnificent organ music that would accompany the ceremony. The ancient stones of Westminster Abbey had witnessed countless royal celebrations and sorrows over the centuries, and today would add another chapter to that rich history. Earl Spencer felt Diana's presence strongly in this sacred place, almost as if she were walking beside them, her spirit watching over her family with love and pride. The interior of Westminster Abbey was breathtaking, adorned with thousands of white flowers and elegant decorations that transformed the ancient cathedral into a fairy tale setting. Earl Spencer and his daughters were escorted down the nave by ceremonial ushers, their footsteps echoing softly on the stone floor that had been walked by kings and queens for nearly 1,000 years. As they took their designated seats, Earl Spencer noticed familiar faces throughout the congregation. European royalty, heads of state, celebrities, and close friends of the royal couple filled every pew. The atmosphere was one of joyful anticipation mixed with the solemnity that comes with such a significant occasion. Lady Kitty discreetly waved to a few acquaintances she recognized from the international social circuit. The Spencer family's seats offered an excellent view of the altar where the ceremony would take place. Earl Spencer found himself remembering Diana's own wedding day in this very same abbey. He had been much younger then, proud to see his sister marrying into the royal family and becoming a princess. None of them could have foreseen the challenges that lay ahead or the tragic end to that fairy tale story. The twins, Eliza and Amelia, were quietly pointing out various guests to each other, recognizing celebrities and royalty from their photographs in society magazines. They had inherited their Aunt Diana's keen interest in people and their ability to remember faces and personal details about individuals they had met at various social functions. The organ music swelled as more distinguished guests continued to arrive, each entrance carefully choreographed according to strict royal protocol. Earl Spencer observed how his daughters handled themselves with perfect poise, having been trained from childhood in the etiquette expected of aristocratic young ladies. They knew when to stand, when to bow their heads respectfully, and how to maintain the dignified composure required at such formal occasions. A murmur of excitement rippled through the congregation as senior members of the royal family began to take their places. Earl Spencer felt a complex mix of emotions seeing the royals who had been part of Diana's life during her marriage. There had been difficult times, moments of tension and misunderstanding, but there had also been genuine affection and family bonds that transcended the public controversies. Lady Kitty leaned closer to her father and whispered something about the beautiful floral arrangements, her voice barely audible in the reverent atmosphere of the abbey. She had developed an appreciation for elegant design through her modeling career, working with world-renowned photographers and stylists who had taught her to notice the artistic details that created visual impact. The ancient abbey seemed to hold memories within its stone walls, centuries of royal celebrations, coronations, weddings, and funerals. Earl Spencer reflected on how his family had become part of this royal history through Diana's marriage and tragic death. The Spencer name was now forever linked with the House of Windsor, creating a legacy that his daughters would carry forward into future generations. As the ceremony time approached, the anticipation in the abbey grew almost palpable. Cameras positioned discreetly around the cathedral would capture every moment for the millions of people watching around the world. Earl Spencer knew that close-up shots of his family's reactions would be analyzed and discussed in newspapers and magazines for days to come. The twins had learned to manage their expressions carefully during public events, showing appropriate emotion while maintaining their privacy. They had watched their father navigate the media attention that came with being Princess Diana's brother, and they had developed their own strategies for dealing with public scrutiny while protecting their personal lives. Earl Spencer noticed how the light streaming through the abbey's magnificent stained glass windows created an almost ethereal atmosphere in the sacred space. The colors danced across the faces of the congregation, adding to the magical quality of the occasion. He imagined Diana looking down from heaven, her spirit present at this celebration of love and commitment. The formal processional music began, signaling that the wedding ceremony was about to commence. Earl Spencer straightened in his seat and exchanged meaningful glances with his daughters. They were representing not just themselves today, but the memory of Diana and the honor of the Spencer family name. Lady Kitty adjusted her elegant hat slightly and smoothed her dress, while the twins checked that their matching fascinators were perfectly positioned. They understood that every detail of their appearance would be photographed and scrutinized, so attention to their presentation was not vanity, but rather a mark of respect for the occasion and their family's reputation. The congregation rose as one as the bridal procession began to make its way down the aisle. Earl Spencer felt his heart skip a beat as he saw the bride, radiant in her wedding gown, walking toward her future with confidence and joy. For a moment, he was transported back to Diana's wedding day, remembering how beautiful and hopeful she had looked as she walked down this same aisle toward what they all believed would be her happily ever after. The wedding ceremony unfolded with all the grandeur and tradition that centuries of royal protocol had perfected. Earl Spencer watched as the bride and groom exchanged vows before the Archbishop of Canterbury, their words echoing through the ancient abbey and reaching the hearts of everyone present. The solemnity and beauty of the moment brought tears to many eyes, including those of Lady Kitty, who discreetly dabbed at her eyes with an elegant handkerchief. During the service, Earl Spencer found his thoughts drifting to Diana and how much she would have enjoyed this celebration. She had always loved weddings and romantic occasions, believing deeply in the power of love to overcome any obstacle. Her own fairy tale wedding had captured the imagination of the world, and though it had ended in heartbreak, her belief in love had never wavered. The Abbey's choir sang, with heavenly voices that seemed to lift the entire congregation towards something divine. The twins, Eliza and Amelia, were visibly moved by the music, having inherited the Spencer family's appreciation for the arts. They had both studied music during their education and understood the technical skill required to perform at such a high level in the challenging acoustics of the ancient cathedral. As the ceremony progressed through its traditional elements, Earl Spencer observed the faces of the royal family members seated in the front rows. The years had brought changes to all of them, lines of experience and responsibility marking their faces, but they maintained the dignified bearing that their positions demanded. The relationship between the Spencer family and the royals had evolved since Diana's death, moving from the tensions of the immediate aftermath to a more mature understanding and mutual respect. The moment came for the exchange of rings, and the symbolism was not lost on Earl Spencer. These simple bands represented eternal commitment, the promise to stand together through whatever challenges life might bring. He thought of his own marriage and the vows he had made, the joys and sorrows that had shaped his family's journey, and the strength that came from facing difficulties together. Lady Kitty glanced at her father during a particularly moving part of the service, recognizing the emotions playing across his features. She had inherited not only Diana's physical beauty, but also her emotional intelligence and ability to read people's feelings. The Spencer children had learned to support each other through the unique challenges that came with their family's public profile and tragic history. The bride looked radiant as she spoke her vows, her voice clear and confident as she promised to love and honor her new husband. Earl Spencer was reminded of how young Diana had been at her own wedding, barely 20 years old, and stepping into a role that would transform her from a kindergarten teacher into one of the most photographed women in the world. The congregation joined in singing a traditional hymn, their combined voices filling the abbey with a powerful expression of hope and celebration. Earl Spencer sang along, his bass voice blending with those around him as they participated in this ancient ritual of community and faith. The Spencer family had always been active in their local church at Althorpe, and these moments of shared worship held deep meaning for them. During the prayer for the newly married couple, Earl Spencer offered his own silent prayers for their happiness and for Diana's continued rest and peace. He asked for strength to continue honoring her memory while allowing his family to move forward and create new chapters in their lives. The burden of being Princess Diana's brother would always be with him, but it was a burden he carried with love and pride. The twins had positioned themselves so they could see both the ceremony and their father's profile, ready to offer support if the emotions of the day became too overwhelming. They had learned to watch out for each other and for their father, understanding that certain occasions could trigger powerful memories and feelings about their beloved Aunt Diana. As the Archbishop pronounced the couple husband and wife, the abbey erupted in restrained but joyful applause. Earl Spencer clapped along with the rest of the congregation, genuinely happy for the newlyweds while feeling a bittersweet pang that Diana was not there to share in the celebration. She had always been the life of any party, bringing laughter and warmth to every gathering. The recessional music began, and the newly married royal couple began their walk back down the aisle as husband and wife. Earl Spencer and his daughter stood with the rest of the congregation, watching as the bride and groom passed by, radiant with happiness and the promise of their future together. The formal ceremony was concluding, but Earl Spencer knew that the day's events were far from over. There would be photographs on the Abbey steps, the carriage procession through London streets, and the wedding reception where they would have opportunities to speak with other guests and offer their personal congratulations to the happy couple. The Spencer family emerged from Westminster Abbey into the bright London sunshine, where thousands of well-wishers had gathered to catch a glimpse of the wedding guests and cheer for the newly married royal couple. The atmosphere outside was festive and joyful, with people waving flags and calling out congratulations to anyone who would listen. Earl Spencer felt the warmth of the crowd's enthusiasm and was reminded of how much the British public loved royal celebrations. Lady Kitty, Eliza, and Amelia handled the attention with practiced grace, smiling warmly at the photographers while maintaining their composure. They had learned from their father's example how to be gracious in public while protecting their privacy. The Spencer daughters understood that their appearance at royal events was seen as a tribute to their Aunt Diana's memory, and they took that responsibility seriously. As they waited for their car to arrive, Earl Spencer was approached by several other wedding guests who offered kind words about Diana and expressed their admiration for how the Spencer family had maintained their dignity through the years. These conversations, while sometimes emotionally challenging, meant a great deal to him. They showed that Diana's impact on people's lives continued long after her death. The twins were quietly discussing their observations about the ceremony, sharing their thoughts about the bride's dress, the music, and the overall beauty of the service. They had inherited the Spencer family's eye for detail and appreciation for well-executed events. Their comments showed a maturity beyond their years, developed through their exposure to high society gatherings and formal occasions. A former friend of Diana's approached the family with tears in her eyes, expressing how much she missed the princess and how proud she would have been to see her nieces grown into such accomplished young women. Lady Kitty graciously accepted the compliments while gently steering the conversation toward positive memories of Diana rather than dwelling on the sadness of her absence. The carriage procession was beginning to form, and Earl Spencer could see the magnificent horses and ceremonial coaches that would carry the royal couple through the streets of London. The pageantry was spectacular, a display of British tradition and ceremony that attracted visitors from around the world. Diana had always loved these grand occasions, appreciating both their historical significance and their theatrical beauty. As their car finally arrived, Earl Spencer took one last look at Westminster Abbey, its ancient spires reaching toward the cloudy London sky. This place held so many memories for his family, both joyful and sorrowful. Today had added another layer to those memories, a celebration that honored both the present happiness of the newlyweds and the enduring legacy of those who were no longer with them. The drive back through London allowed them to see the crowds lining the streets, waiting for the royal procession. Children sat on their fathers' shoulders, elderly people brought folding chairs to claim the best viewing spots, and tourists from every corner of the globe gathered to witness this historic moment. Earl Spencer was moved by the sight of so many people coming together to celebrate love and tradition. Lady Kitty was already receiving messages on her phone from friends around the world who had watched the ceremony on television. The royal wedding had been broadcast globally, and she was hearing from contacts in New York, Milan, and other international fashion capitals where she had worked. The Spencer family's appearance at the wedding had been noted and appreciated by their social circle. During the quiet car ride, Earl Spencer reflected on how Diana would have handled today's events. She would have been genuinely excited about the romance and pageantry, but she also would have been thinking about the humanitarian causes she supported and how royal celebrations could be used to bring attention to important issues. Her legacy of charitable work continued through various foundations and through the example she had set for others. The twins were discussing their plans for the rest of the day, including the wedding reception where they would have opportunities to reconnect with family friends and distant relatives. These gatherings often served as informal family reunions for the extended aristocratic families of Britain, allowing relationships to be maintained and strengthened across the generations. As they arrived back at their London residence, Earl Spencer felt a mixture of exhaustion and satisfaction. The day had been emotionally challenging, but ultimately positive. They had honored Diana's memory by their dignified presence at the royal wedding, and they had witnessed a beautiful celebration of love and commitment that would create happy memories for years to come. Lady Kitty helped her father from the car, noticing that the emotional weight of the day had taken its toll on him. The Spencer children had learned to watch for signs that their father needed support, understanding that certain occasions could trigger powerful emotions related to their aunt's death and their family's complex relationship with the royal family. The royal wedding was concluded, but its impact would continue. Photographs from the day would appear in magazines and newspapers around the world, and the Spencer family's gracious participation would be remembered as another example of their commitment to maintaining family honor while moving forward with their own lives. Diana's legacy lived on through their dignity, their charity work, and their continued connection to the causes she had championed during her too brief life.